to what degree am I responsible to make myself non-manipulatable?
So I know there's a saying, fool me once, shame on you.
Yeah,
Fool me twice, shame on me.
yeah.
Fool me 3 times, shame on me again. Fool me 4 times, shame on you, because you are picking on a vulnerable person.
Oh, wow.
Welcome to our podcast. Today is episode 9. Thank you for all of our loyal viewers back again. Thank you to all of those who believe themselves to be manipulators and they just want to check out what we have to say about you. Or those who believe they are being manipulated. This might help guide you. As you guys can see the title, we are discussing manipulation today. And Mr. Jordan will kick off.
Thank you. All right, so I think I'll just give some context behind why the topic of manipulation is interesting to us. So we both attended a week a training where they taught us about business professionalism.
I thought it was business etiquette.
Business etiquette.
Same thing.
Thank you. What they taught there is very much the same as if you've read How to Win Friends and Influence People. A lot of body language, how to speak to people, how to win them over, how to secretly get on their good side, how to read what they are saying without hearing what they are saying, so reading body language. And a lot of it was, to a lot of people, I think, very like, wow, I never knew that this was a thing. You can tell that a person is imagining when they're looking in their top right, and if they're lying, if they're looking in their top left. There all seem to be all these indicators where you can get more information than you thought was accessible. And obviously within the context of business, etiquette is to try and use that information strategically to either put yourself in a better position or make the business more money. And obviously what comes up in this situation is, that just sounds so manipulative. But it begs a question, is it? And the reason it begs the question is, well, you're just using the information that's freely available to everyone. You've just learned a skill now of being able to read it. And the way that you use it, perhaps that's the question of whether it's manipulation or not. But in the light of our previous podcast, the gray area of whether or not this is manipulation is a definite problem. And the reason it is if the water is so murky about when you are manipulating or not manipulating someone, it's a huge problem for everyone in your life, your personal relationships, your relationships at work. And then in light of the previous podcast, if you do these small steps of manipulation, you're eventually going to make big ones. And what are those big steps? So how can we identify and distinguish between reading a situation better, articulating yourself better, and between that and manipulation?
So just for those who might not be sure about why is manipulation a gray area, because the way I grew up, manipulation is associated with something terribly bad, and you're either a sociopath or you're a narcissist of some kind. It has a negative association. Yeah, it has a big negative association for me. And I recall when I discussed this business etiquette training with you, you were like, no, it's so wonderful. You get to use all of this information to build relationships with people, and you'll be able to have much more success in your relationships with people because you're able to do all of these subtle manipulative things. And you were looking at manipulation as a tool of usefulness. And to further, I guess, argue your point, if you ask questions like, if you can manipulate someone to become a Christian, if you can manipulate someone to accept Jesus Christ, aren't you doing a good thing? So that's where it can become very gray. And looking at where to draw the line, should you draw the line through manipulation as a whole, or halfway through, because sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Is there a possible way to do? I think that's what we're trying to explore today.
Is manipulation bad, objectively?
Number one. And is there a way to distinguish between, I want to say, manipulation and influence, where influence is seen as, let's say, a positive form of making someone do something or impacting them? Just to add on that, something that excited me about the training and made it seem so useful is, I'll use this example again. If you want to appear humble to people, you think to yourself, how can I be humble? Okay, a humble person acts this way. And then you try and act that way. And that is purely based on your own relationship to the word humble. And that is how you've experienced life and the humble people that you've experienced in your life.
Yeah.
And perhaps your own internal relationship to the word humble and how it makes you feel. But anyway, the point being, if I now try to enact that humility out, because I think that's how I should be, other people may perceive it as arrogance because I don't know the basic foundations of human behavior.
Okay.
And so I saw it as a tool to accurately articulate what you want to other people. And that can be definitely seen as a form of manipulation because you are controlling the way that people see you to something that you exactly want. And that is usually for a means to an end.
I wouldn't say that's manipulation. I wouldn't say there's any form of control there.
Well, I just mean you could argue that it is if you're doing it for a means to an end. So, for instance, I want you to be on my good side because I don't actually like you, but I realize that you have a power within a certain position in the company. So I'm going to strategically going to do that so that I'm in your good books and you're putting a good work for me. You can see that as a form of manipulating the situation, but not necessarily the person. But you can argue, no, is that wrong? I'm being very inauthentic.
Yeah. So would you say if I dressed nicely, I know I'm gonna see the girl I have a crush on tonight, so I put a little bit of extra deodorant on, a little bit of extra aftershave, and then I walk up to her and I have done my background research. I know, what kind of stuff she's into, and I happen to carry this book that she loves, and I'm like, hey, excuse me, is this your book? I found it lying over there. And she's like, oh no, it's not, but I love that book. Or you kind of, you manipulate the situation and you do things that make her just want to engage with you even more because of your selfish desire to want to engage with her. Would you see that as a form of manipulation?
See, so that's what's tricky. And I think even with the couple of examples that we've given now, you can see how there's manipulation of self, manipulation of situation, manipulation of others. So I think it's very important to deform. Most people, when they say manipulation, they mean one thing. And so I think let's get it straight.
Okay.
What is manipulation? What is the definition of manipulation?
And then we can look at if that is a good thing or not.
Okay.
All right. So, great question. I happen to have Google open here on my left with a definition. For those who want to fact check me, I Googled, and I quote, what is manipulation in Harvard? I wanted to say in the Harvard, what's the word book?
Dictionary.
Yeah. But I didn't want to type out dictionary. So this is the definition of the Harvard word manipulation. It says, a statement or action can be said to be manipulative if it does not sufficiently engage or appeal to people's capacity for reflective and deliberative choice. To break it down for our Afrikaans friends, it's anything you say or do that doesn't allow the other person to fully think about what you're doing or deal with what you're doing, how it affects them. They don't have the freedom to choose. You can see it as you're talking to their subconscious and not to them, and that affects them in a way that they never had the freedom to choose how that is going to affect them.
Do you like this definition?
I believe this is the definition. That's how I see manipulation. When I read this, I'm like, okay, that's a very good definition to work with, because it doesn't distinctively say that it's bad. It doesn't say manipulation is the terrible action of making someone do what you want them to do, which I think many people think it is. It doesn't clearly define it as a negative thing. It is purely a way of speaking or doing things that doesn't allow the other person to fully comprehend with what you're doing or engage with what you're doing, or have the capacity to deal with what you're doing to them on a subconscious level.
Well, I think it's tested.
But wait, do you agree with this definition?
So I want to interrogate it first.
All right.
Not yet with an example, but in doing my research now on manipulation as a concept, there's just two very basic schools of thought in terms of whether it's right or wrong. And the reason I want to do right or wrong is to try and then attack it from the right or wrong and then define it.
Okay.
Which is, there's a consequence-based evaluation and a intention-based evaluation. So if what you're doing, I think I'm maybe jumping 2 steps ahead here and not looking at it from the right. But what I wanted to do was say, a lot of people, when you ask them, are you manipulating someone right now? They'll say, no, not really, because I am, this is for a good reason. So then it is considered manipulation or not based on the outcome of the situation, even though the action, you could see it as manipulative in isolation. And then the other one, so that was that's a consequential perspective. And then there's a intention perspective, which is, what is my real intention here? Am I trying to do good for this person, or am I trying to do bad? Okay. Actually, I think I mixed them up there. If you're trying to do good, that's your intention, and maybe that's, you'd consider that then that to be not be a form of manipulation. But if you are doing it for a devious cause, or you're doing it because of personal reasons, then it's seen as a form of manipulation. So whether you have personal gain or not. So if I had to, that was very confusing now, I think, but if I had to re-say it, if you're using influence for personal gain, it's manipulation.
Okay.
But if you're using influence for the good of
the other person,
well, the good of all of us, the good of the other person, then
who's all of us? Let's
just say it's mutually beneficial. It could be a mutually beneficial influence.
Okay, so if I manipulate you into choosing Christ,
that could be mutually beneficial.
Well, it definitely
maybe you need a brother in Christ.
It definitely benefits you. So,
according to you,
so you'd say it's not manipulating you; it's influencing you to choose Christ, because now it benefited you. So the intent was good. So it doesn't fall into the category of manipulation.
Yeah, I'm saying this is how it is commonly understood. Okay. But let's get back to your definition then.
Okay.
It seems like access to information and control are central ideas in your definition.
Yeah.
So, like you said, it doesn't really distinguish between right and wrong, but rather the person's ability to choose. So, and the person's knowledge of what the game field is.
Yeah.
So in that context, you came up with an example now, which is a very interesting example, which is influencing people to believe in Christ or believe in...
Which we agree on is a good thing.
Okay, let's I don't know how I feel about that, but but let's have that, let's go into that.
Let's just then define it as influencing someone to do a good thing.
Great. Influencing someone to do a good thing. Are you not taking control away from them?
That's why I'd say that's manipulation and why you shouldn't do it. Even if the consequence is a good thing, I'd say that's still manipulation and that's still wrong. I really think of this as a big form of disrespect. And if I try to control you to make a better choice for your life, cool, you made a better choice, but you didn't really make a better choice. I made the better choice through you. I made you make the better choice. So you don't have the benefit of growing, of learning, of you don't reap the product of this success. So even though it on the surface level looks good, it's not your win and it's not your choice. And taking choice away from anyone, good or bad, I wouldn't do that. I don't think that's a good thing in any sense. Some examples make it difficult, especially when it comes to raising kids. But I think looking at the consequence of what your manipulation or influence achieved won't help us define if it's correct or not.
Yeah, and this is something that this Thinking Fast and Slow book outlines very nicely. You have a big component of luck when it comes to evaluating decisions by their outcome, because let's say you make a decision at work, you decide to be good to a certain person, and it reflects back on you. You're very much going to make a positive loop there and say, you see, clearly this decision that I've made works, but it could backfire. In same person, same situation, does the same thing, but that person for some it's just rubbed a different way because of something in their past, and then it backfires on you completely. So the outcome, evaluating your action just based on the outcome, is such a problematic way.
And similar to the intention, I have found, I don't know how long it was, a while back, I found myself in a situation where I realized that I was manipulating someone, not consciously and not ill-intently, but I was taking choice away from them by the way I was speaking to them, by the way I was affecting them. So, because obviously we've read up about this quite a bit about in terms of body language and how people engage with other people and how things affect each other, and I think gaslighting is a whole other thing. And I wouldn't say I was gaslighting the person, but I was trying to help them, and in my attempt to help, I realized subconsciously that this person is a lost case, and if I leave them in their own hands, they will suffer the consequences. So I without realizing it, tried to manipulate them for their own benefit. And I still think that's manipulation. I still think that's bad because I was taking a choice away from them. So that's ultimately why I say manipulation in itself is bad if we look at this definition, because it's the disrespectful part of not respecting them to make their own mistakes, make their own good choices, bad choices, but you're taking that away from them. And that's a sense of disrespect, and you are playing God in their life. So when you stand in front of God at the end of time or whenever you die, you have to then answer for the choices they made because you made them do it. And that's not something we as people should do. I don't think we should take that upon ourselves.
Why is it so bad to take a choice away from another person? Perhaps it's a difficult choice. They feel a lot of relief there.
I think it rips away what life is meant to be. That's a very profound statement, but there's I can't word this perfectly well in this moment, but I can give you an example. Or I can ask anyone this question and they will feel what I feel when you ask me that question. It is, would you ever want to be manipulated? Good for the best of your ability or for the worst? Everyone would be, no,
Not me.
not really. I don't want anyone to make my choices for me. And that very feeling that we feel when we think that is what everyone feels, and why you should realize what you're doing is wrong. So I can't say why taking free will away is wrong, but I can tell you anyone taking my free will away is something I don't want. And therefore, because we all mutually don't want that to happen, it is wrong to do it upon others. Because maybe this is why Matthew 7 verse 12 says, do unto others as you wish to be done to yourself. And I really live by that. And that's maybe why I believe taking free will is wrong, because I don't want mine taken away.
So this is very interesting that the conversation about manipulation has become almost a conversation about like consent, and stealing something precious away from the person, which is their ability to make an active decision and then reflect on it and have that be a life experience that they went through. I decided to do this. This is what happened, and I reflect negative. It was my decision. The amount of resentment that comes from a decision that was not fully yours. And people don't really consider that. I've had that before where I was heavily influenced or manipulated to make a certain decision, and I was not able to reflect on that situation except for I should not be manipulated next time. So the whole situation itself falls apart except for the point in which the decision, I want to say, was made for me. And not necessarily, I think, when you were speaking now, you were saying, no one wants their decisions made for them. That's not necessarily true. I think some people are very comfortable with other people taking the lead. And so that's not what I'm talking about. The robbing someone of a decision is where they think they are deciding, but you have so heavily twisted the reality and presented it to them that way, that when they look back and they see that was not the reality, it upsets them because they cannot reflect. They can only reflect on that twisted version of reality, which is not reality. And that's what's so terrible about it. But it's very easy to attack this for, like we've said, a situation where someone is manipulating you for their own gain, or for, you're trying to, you're trying to stab someone in the back, and so you manipulate them in a certain direction. But let's zone in on an example where it's for good, because I think there's a lot to explore there, and it focuses more on the essence of manipulation. So
okay,
manipulate someone.
I have an example. I think we can look at the parent example there.
Okay.
But before, I just want to mention 2 comments quickly. I think, remember we discussed self-awareness.
Yes.
The whole point of trying to become self-aware is to be able to know that the choices you make are your choices and not someone else's, or not your own reacting to life. You want to be as in control of your life as you want to be, because then when you succeed or you don't succeed, that's on you. And the other thing is, when you speak of self-manipulation, you put influence quite close to it, and they seem very similar. I just want to differentiate with that. I think the slight differentiation between manipulation and influence is the one allows the other participant to choose. So when I influence you,
to choose fairly
and with their full capacity. So I present to you, hey Jordan, and I give you all the information that I'm dealing with directly to you. I present it to you verbally or physically. Let's say I dress nicely and I show up to a meeting. That's not manipulative. That is dressing nicely and influencing people to know that you are a well-dressed person, you have things together, you're being well-groomed. That's not manipulation. That's an influence, but they are presented with that information clearly and fairly. And how that affects them is something they have the capacity to deal with. So that's where I would, but then intent comes in there, because I could be doing this specifically because I know you are aware of, you are more interested, if you do the girl example again, the girl's more interested in groomed men, so now I groom because I want her to be more. So it becomes gray in that sense. But I just wanted to point out, I think influencing someone is a fair way, and I have no problem with that. But as soon as you're going out to do it in a way that they don't have a choice in it, that's where I would say it's manipulation. But to the example.
Before you get to that example, you've done parents now, and I'm going to link it to that.
All right.
So and I'm going back to the previous example that you gave, which is manipulating someone to believe in Christ. And I find that I want to say that form of manipulation so wrong, or that form of conversation so manipulative, because, and this is the illustration. So if someone comes to you, they have a certain worldview, and let's say I want to illustrate that by saying they've painted the walls a specific color, and they've put certain illustrations on the walls, and that is their worldview. When they sit down by themselves, that is what they see, and that's why they believe what they do. If you're very good, you're very articulate, and you're very influential, you are able to understand where they are, what they're looking at, and repaint it for them, so that what you are trying to tell them what they should do looks like it makes sense. And that's, I don't know if you want to call that influence or manipulation, but it's a way of convincing someone to do something. But the problem with that whole concept is, in that moment, they appear to make a decision, but when they go home to their own room and the paint that you've put there falls away, they're left with what they had before. And so I want to say the decision doesn't last because it wasn't really theirs. And that's the essence of it. In the moment, it may appear that they make that decision, but because it is, you've manipulated their worldview in that moment, it's not truly their decision. That's kind of how you've stolen it from them.
And we see that with pastors' kids a lot. For those who don't know, if you go and study and you see those kids that were raised by pastors, it's quite a common phenomenon.
My dad's a pastor.
So, and look, you became an atheist for a while. So that's the thing. You cannot manipulate your kid into being a Christian, and that's a dangerous thing. A lot of parents think, okay, it's my responsibility to raise my child as a Christian, But then they don't present their kid with all the facts because they're afraid that the kid chooses wrong. Now they manipulate their kid to be a Christian, and when the kid gets outside of the home and of that manipulation, they realize it is not as it was said to be. I was told it's just druggies, they're going to stab you, there's going to be drugs around the corner, and if you just, walk into the dark, you're finished. And then one day, accidentally, oh, they had to go around the dark corner to get home, and then it wasn't so bad. And then the next day, their friend who they trust and they have a very good, trustworthy relationship with comes up to them with a drug. And like, hey man, we tried this, it was pretty good. That's not how they were manipulated into thinking this is going to present themselves. And then all of that fake walls that were built start crumbling down. And then we've seen too many examples of that.
This is interesting now because what you've done is, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say you've made the example very similar now of my thing where you create a fake version of reality and you use that to guide the person's decisions. And then when they encounter what is actually reality, they don't know how to navigate that situation, even though they supposedly have been taught that way. So you're essentially saying parents give their kids this fake version of reality and fake virtues that attach to that. And then when they get to the real life, it is the friend that brings the drugs and not the druggie on the street. And then they are not equipped to be able to make those choices because you've robbed them from the opportunity to do that earlier.
And who's the most prone to being manipulated? It's kids. Because kids don't have the full capacity to engage with things yet. So it's the saddest thing when parents manipulate their kids. And parents most often don't even realize that they're doing it. They believe that they are doing it for the child's best interest. And they were only maybe manipulated by the church to think that this is the way they should be raising their child, because that's the tradition and that's how it's always been. So then the parent is in the wrong because the parent did it, yes. But then the church is in the wrong because the church made the parent do it, in a sense. So then it becomes a whole thing.
Handing down manipulative.
And then how do you approach that? You need to be self-aware. You need to be self-aware to combat. So you mentioned something quite interesting the other day. You asked how much of the person who's being manipulated, how much of the responsibility of being manipulated, how much of that responsibility should be their responsibility?
Yeah, so let me give some more context on that. This came up because I thought to myself, you asked me the question, do you ever want to be manipulated? And I thought to myself, like, no, ideally no, never. But unless it will teach me something, unless it will present for me a call to be better. And a situation I thought about is, if you navigate in some sort of social dynamic or workplace dynamic, and someone, I want to say, very much dominates you in some linguistic way or argumentative way, and it's it's a form of manipulating the situation that they are able to do because they just a lot more fluent with, let's say, negotiation literature. You have been dominated now, and it is not because the other person is a horrible person, it is simply because they are better educated than you and they've practiced more. So you can see this as a form of debate. So I thought to myself, well, whose fault is that I was able to be manipulated in that situation? So to what degree, like, if I'm just a very unlearned person, or just, I want to say dumb, but dumb is such a, but I'm going to use it now, it's easy. If I'm just a dumb person, I'm going to be manipulated very easily. And this is also why kids are so easily manipulated or influenced, because, well, they're dumb. And the point there is, whose fault is that? To what degree am I responsible to make myself non-manipulatable? That's the point I wanted to bring up there is, I have a responsibility to play not being manipulated. But then also, I think what you were more getting at, if you have been manipulated, to what degree do you carry the moral consequence?
So I know there's a saying, it's actually quite a joke, but it's become a saying as well. Fool me once, shame on you.
Yeah.
Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
Fool me 3 times, shame on me again. Fool me 4 times, shame on you, because you are picking on a vulnerable person.
Oh, wow.
And then it goes up to like 7. It's like this whole comedic act. But from that, yes, sometimes it's not in your control. Some people really are manipulative people, and they manipulate you, and it's not always your fault. You're not always able to deal with all of that. Sometimes life just hits you hard from the side. But at some point, yes, there should be, listen, you are being manipulated. Let's say you're in a relationship, a manipulative relationship. After 5 years of being told you're in a manipulative relationship, I would kind of lose my empathy for the person who keeps to choose that kind of lifestyle. But also, the difficulty of manipulation is they are not always making their own choices. So are they really fully choosing to remain in that lifestyle? So it's hard to say that the manipulated person should bear responsibility, but they will always bear the consequences. They will always bear the consequences. And that's the sad part of it. That's why manipulation is so frowned upon and so scared, so feared. Like, ooh, just run. If the guy has any manipulative tendencies, get out.
See, it's tough because, and I'm going to take this really close to home, in a very technical workplace, you often find people that aren't very socially apt. And I want to say they will get taken advantage of more easily because of this. People that come from a background where they can basically manipulate them more easily. And so if you know that this is a problem for you and you choose to remain this way, socially inequipped or debatingly inequipped, you should be fine. See, that's the thing. It seems like, to a certain degree, you have a responsibility there to address the fact that you are so easily manipulated. I don't know. What do you think?
Sorry, my thoughts drifted a bit there into a very profound line of thinking.
Let's hear it.
So you asked me, why is it wrong to take someone's free will away? And the answer came to me.
Let's hear it.
Free will is almost the essence of life. Let's think of a computer or a robot. Would you say it's living when it's been programmed to do what it does?
I don't feel bad when I break it.
Exactly. You don't consider it to be a form of life. And then let's say AI, because that's so recent. The more AI be seemingly human, the more empathy people are getting for it, because it's seemingly conscious, seemingly living,
seemingly making decisions for
seemingly
itself.
making decisions as if it has free will. That's the whole thing there. So having the ability to choose, having the ability to have a free will, is ultimately what we use to classify what has life and what has not got life. So you can probably argue, but animals have life. Well, they're living, but that's different than life. Life itself. Life, the ultimate journey. Life, that which makes beauty and suffering.
So you're going even into consciousness now.
It is innately beautiful, but it requires free will.
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's why human life is significant to us. And so, to almost wrap up the idea, manipulation is so wrong because it takes away the essence of what it means to live as a human.
You're taking someone's life away. You're making them a puppet.
Yeah.
You're becoming a puppeteer. But, sorry, back to your question.
I can't even remember it now. But I think that's fine. Let's leave it there.
I have a last thing that I want to bring up, and that's self-manipulation. And where we allow ourselves to manipulate ourselves. And I say ourselves, but it's difficult to say that I am consciously manipulating myself by the definition that we've used, because to say that I'm doing something against myself, which I do not have the capacity to engage with, I can't make myself make a choice, because it's my choice to make that choice.
Okay.
But there are things that I can do, such as the music I listen to and the series I watch. And we've all come into that. If you listen to a lot of sad music or a lot of relationship music and breakup songs, then you find yourself with the tendency to have that kind of line of thinking, that sad kind of thinking that, oh, relationships are all bad.
Okay.
So what you engage with and you're constantly allowing to affect you, most of us don't realize the subconscious effect of it, and therefore are willingly choosing to manipulate ourselves through it.
So I think manipulation is a good word there because it describes the essence of the negative connotation.
Even
with
the positive
action of allowing yourself to, well, also the positive, but allowing yourself to go down a certain road, or choosing to, I think what you're talking about now is choosing to deny the negative consequence of your habits, even though you kind of know what they're doing or what they could be doing.
But even with happy music.
Well, actually, hold on. I think I've got something there. Choosing to deny the reality of what it could be doing to you and how it is shaping you is a form of manipulation, because you are trying to take a part of yourself to not. There's a whole piece of information there that you are hiding away from yourself in allowing yourself to make that decision, which is very close to the definition of manipulation that we've had there. You are denying yourself the ability to self-reflect here, and choosing to believe that it doesn't influence you, and therefore allowing yourself to do it.
I'd word it a little bit different, but it comes down to manipulating yourself. It is the choice of ignorance which allows manipulation. If you're choosing ignorance over self-awareness, then you are the one causing your own manipulation.
Which is a denial of reflection.
Yeah, so don't be ignorant, guys.
Wow, thanks, Ruan.
Just
don't be ignorant.
Just think about it. And the sad thing is, I recently had to give someone advice. They asked me a really tough question. It's I told you about this. It was a kid. He's about 15, and he was given away by his father when he was 5 years old. And he asked me, how do I forgive? How do I forgive my dad? Me sitting there like, Oosh. What do you say to someone like that? Because you're not in their shoes. And the danger of giving advice, in a way of telling someone what to do and not just guiding them to deal with what they are dealing with, once again, can be seen as a form of manipulation, because now you're telling them how to act. And you're taking that choice away from them, and also the consequence of that choice. Because if it's good advice and they do it, that's your win. And if it's bad advice and they don't do it, well, if it's bad advice and they do it, it's the consequences on them. And you're like, oof, unlucky. You shouldn't have followed my advice.
So it's funny because people ask for advice, and then you can offer manipulation in return.
You can. That's why it's such a dangerous thing to give advice, because you are being put in a position of being a puppet master over their choice. And you should be the responsible person to not become the puppet master, but only to point out to the person how to make their own choices and maybe help them deal with it. And that's ultimately the first thing I said. Well, okay, the second thing I said, which was, when the thought comes up about your dad and you have to think about it, don't run away from thinking about it. Don't not want to think about it. Don't go and, go onto Instagram or open WhatsApp or play a game, because that's most likely what we do when we get confronted in our head about a reality we don't want to deal with, because we don't know how to deal with it. But running away from it is the worst thing you can do, because you're not allowing yourself the capacity for reflective thinking. And people don't realize that. So when you have to deal with a very difficult reality, deal with it. Spend the time to actually think about it. Because it's so easy to fill our time in today's age. You don't just sit there and have nothing to do. You have either your phone available or whatever, or this or that or that.
It's so easy to manipulate yourself, to take away the opportunity to self-reflect.
Yes, and that is...
And in turn, rob yourself of certain decisions.
Yeah, and we agree that's wrong. because you're stealing your own life, or you're not living then. You're just reacting to life.
And I think that if I had to just take it back right to the beginning, which is, we were talking about professional etiquette. I like this definition. It's ironic that we just went through this podcast, looked at a definition, and we're like, that's a good definition because of these reasons. But there's a lot of gray areas that we explored. But the idea of the professional etiquette, it works very well, this definition, in robbing a person of that essence of what it means to be human, which is their free will, and so many opportunities for that on the good and the bad side. Even though the outcome is good, you've still robbed them. If the outcome is bad, you've still robbed them. And I think you can draw quite a clear line in the sand, even though there are some gray areas. You're not looking at consequence, you're not looking at motive, you're just looking at the opportunity to be a person. And I think well done, good definition that you found, and it checks out.
Yeah, the only danger, guys, we'll end it there, is this is what we've agreed upon to be the definition we look at. And if someone comes to you with a different definition, that's a whole other thing. And like, that's the same with someone defines to be a Christian differently. Like, how do you deal with someone who says a Christian is someone who goes to church and you believe it's something completely different? So this is what we take from this definition. This is what we believe that manipulation is seen as. And if the whole world agreed upon the same definitions, things would be quite easy, or much easier to define what's good and bad. I think maybe that's the attack of the enemy of sort, but just at least define for yourselves what it is. No, don't define it for yourselves. That's... If everyone had to define whatever everything is for themselves, there would be no unison. So don't define your own reality. Don't let us define your reality either. So I would say go to the Bible, but I don't think the Bible says manipulation is etc.
This is a very difficult thing that you're trying to do, which is to say, define the world. You're trying to find the essence of, figure out what is real and what is right for yourself and from your place of reference, which we agree is the Bible. But that is another good podcast topic, which is the game of definitions that we all play.
Yeah.
But
to end off the self-awareness, because I don't think we're doing another one.
Yeah.
Become self-aware and become aware of what it is, and many other things as well. And thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for tuning in.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Cheers.